Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Alan Barry Labacan with the Rocks and Stocks News website. We've got another in our series of interviews with company executives. In this case, we've got TRU Precious Metals. They're a sponsor of the website. They've got a great project in Newfoundland, which is really bursting onto the gold exploration scene. What you're seeing on the screen right now is from their news release that they reported their IP results. And we've got Barry Green and Joel Friedman on to discuss that news. Thanks for joining me, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us. It's great.
Thanks as always, Alan.
Yeah, okay, guys. So what really stands out to me from this is that those are large anomalies, and they sit right below some very impressive bedrock samples and some float samples around there. This is in a very exciting part of your claims. Barry, why don't you shine some light on this news for us?
Sure, by all means. So what we're seeing here is the Jacobs Pond area, and this is one of several areas that we're covering with IP on our Golden Rose project. The Jacobs Pond area is one of our premier areas that we think is an up and coming potential for new discovery here. So, what you're seeing here, the square areas are basically bedrock samples with gold, copper, silver, and the triangles, or sorry, the stars are actually float samples, but they're all kind of very localized float samples. And the model you're seeing underneath it is basically what we've detected are IP anomalies of different strengths. So the orange values would be, the orange sections would be kind of lower strength, let's say IP, and as you get stronger and hotter colors, the pink would be considered stronger parts of the IP anomaly. And so what they've done is they've picked up the IP anomaly on multiple lines. And when you do that, you can create sort of volumes to kind of, I guess, correlate from line to line and say, okay, now we've got a volume of IP, and when you plot your gold samples on them, you can see where you are with respect to sort of how big the thing could potentially be. The IP anomaly. So from the pictures, you can see that where some of the high grade samples. If you can see my cursor moving here, like down in this area, we've collected some very high grade gold, copper, silver samples, appear to be localized from that local area, and we're seeing a very extensive IP anomaly in this area, which runs for about 2.3, 2.4 kilometers. This IP anomaly over here, where the main Jacobs Pond showing is, and the rose gold showing, which are high grade as well, that's about 1.6, between 1.6 to 1.7 kilometers long here. So in total, we've got about 4 kilometers of strike length with significant IP on it all along.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about those samples associated with the IP, but let's first talk about the IP itself. Really what you're looking for is contrast of the country rock, if you will, and the chargeability in the rock, whether it's a booming high or a more modest. You're really looking for the contrast. Is that right, Barry?
Yeah, the strength of the IP is not necessarily indicative of the grade. So sometimes a more moderate IP could give you a high grade. Really, all the IP is telling you is, are there metals in the ground that can hold a charge? So when they put a chart, when the geophysics guys put a charge into the ground, they then shut off their instruments and let that charge sort of disappear. And they see kind of what areas can hold the charge longer than others, and that really determines whether there's an IP anomaly or not.
Well, and also also your depth of where you are, where the anomaly is. If it's deeper, it's not going to give you quite a stronger response. Is that correct, Barry?
Yes and no, but you know, it really the length of your line will determine how deep you can see. So the longer your line is, the deeper you can see, and the better you can see in the center of your line to depth and to resolution as well. So it's more to do with like whether, you know, if there's metal, gold is often associated with other sulfide minerals. So in, you know, a lot of gold deposits around the world, you'll find other minerals like copper minerals, you know, or zinc minerals, or pyrite, which is just a common sulfide mineral that occurs quite commonly all over the place. But gold quite often will be associated with these other metals. So if you charge the ground, you find a chargeability anomaly that you kind of defines an area, a region, and you're finding gold that's associated with these other metals, which is what we're seeing here, then, you know, you can infer that the size of your target is that big as you're showing here, right? So that kind of gives you some confidence that there's a, you know, a fair volume here that it could potentially host, you know, more mineralization like we're seeing in the samples. And, you know,
And
that will
Joel,
determine.
you had something to add there?
Well, it's the base. I think the base metals give off a stronger anomalous response relative to gold. But like Barry says, since we're tending to find base metals in conjunction with gold up here, it's great to see very strong anomalies relating to the base metals, which is indicative that there might be associated gold.
Well, actually, you can see the sulfides in that one float sample up in the northern part there. And then it also is worth noting that you had some spectacular float samples there, 20 grams of gold, 5 grams of silver, some copper, and that was a pretty nice looking sample there, Barry.
That's actually bedrock, Alan. That's not float. You know, that's actually sitting right in situ in the bedrock. So, you know, when you look at the IP anomaly that's around it, well, it's no surprise that if you're seeing this kind of sulfides and quartz veining in the bedrock, well, you know, it lights up kind of regionally around that with bedrock gold. You know, and what we typically try to do when we're doing a systematic program is not just one technique. We try to do 2 or 3 or 4 multiple techniques and see if we can tick all the boxes. And then that gives us sort of more confidence that what we're looking at really is real before we go to the trenching and drilling stage. And so, you know, one of the things that we did, which I'll show on the next slide, you know, previously we had done this survey previously in 2021. This is like a regional soil survey over the same grid. So this grid you see here, line 21, you know, to line 44, for instance, there's line 21 on the IP, and there's line 44 goes up to 47, right? So it's the same grid, and you see, you know, copper, zinc, lead, silver, arsenic, and gold in soils. And when you look at where, like, there's a big copper anomaly here, and it seems to continue. It may even go off the grid here, so we need to do some more sampling in that area to further constrain the anomaly. But, you know, when you look at where, for instance, that high grade sample sits right in the copper anomaly right there, and, you know, if you look at that little hole, you know, it's just below that hole. So like there's also a zinc anomaly, there's a lead anomaly, you know, there's a silver anomaly, there's an arsenic, and there's gold. That area is actually right in this area, right in here.
And all of that sits on an important structural trend, these deep structures that are cracks in the earth that allow these fluids to come up. So you are checking off all the boxes, right, Barry?
Well, you know, this is on the Cape Ray shear zone. And, you know, if you look just a couple of days ago, the Cape Ray guys, you know, just put out a press release, and they kind of, I guess, reconfirmed what they're looking for, and what they look for a Cape Ray type deposit is like anomalous zinc, silver, and lead in the soils. And that's, if they find that, and gold, of course, if they find that, they know they're on a Cape Ray style deposit. So we're seeing all the same signatures here. Plus, we're seeing some copper as well. They didn't mention copper, but we're seeing a lot of copper. And we know the gold goes with the copper specifically because we're seeing it in these samples. Where we get high grade the copper, we're also seeing gold. So like that sample there, with right as I point to that star and you see our anomaly, as when I go back, like that's the same sample right there. And this is what the IP is showing us in the same spot, right? So it gives us confidence that we got a very good target here for the next stage of trenching and drilling, opening it up, see exactly what we got.
Joel, why don't you close it off with where we go from here?
Sure. It's, we're obviously in a good position here, setting up with a target of significant size. It's extended, as Barry mentioned, along multiple kilometers, which is great. I'm also pleased that we just closed our financing, raising just under $1.5 million. I think in this market, that's, quite a respectable turnout. A good mix of flow through and hard dollars to sustain our operations. Flow through money is obviously going in the ground for trenching and drilling in this general area, as Barry mentions, in Q3. We actually could have taken in a bit more money. We turned away a couple of orders that we didn't think would, buy into the long-term vision we have for the company in growing out and developing Golden Rose. And so we think we're in good position here to deliver on discoveries, and then a further build out of Golden Rose and advancement of the project over the next months and, through Q3. And we got Barry and Pierce, our exploration manager. We got, them and our team on the case here to already be moving things into action in terms of permitting. And so we can get to trenching and drilling pretty quickly in the third quarter.
Perfect. I'm going to close it off, guys. Thank you very much for joining me again and helping us to make these shows possible with your sponsorship of the website.
Thanks as always, Alan.
Okay, let me close it off and we'll have a chat at the other end. So there you go, folks. Newfoundland is a very exciting area for gold exploration these days due to newfound gold discovery. But there's other big structures that are equally as impressive, which is, for example, the Valentine Lake corridor. There's a 3 or 4 million ounce deposit to the north of these guys that's now moving towards becoming a mine. They've got the Cape Ray below them. These deep structures are what helps the fluids make their way to the surface. They've had success with the drilling. They've got multiple targets on this project. Jacob's Pond is very exciting due to those float samples and now these IP results. So with a $7.74 million valuation, I think these guys are a real up and comer. And as always, my show's for information purposes only. It's important for you to speak with your financial advisors and do your homework. I recommend you do your homework by going to their website, checking out their presentations, going to my YouTube channel, Rocks and Stocks News, and you'll find other interviews with Barry and Joel. And I've got a lot of hope for these guys, and I think they're doing all the right work that will lead them to success. On that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.